Okay, welcome back. This is part three, I think, of three. And I notice I jumped ahead just a couple of slides. We want to get to the project charter, creating the project charter. Remember, this charter, it does something very important. It formally recognizes the project. Your company formally recognizes the project through this charter. It's always high level. That's another very important. So the things you're putting down are just trying to narrow down the scope a little bit, but keep it aligned, okay? And it will be signed off by you and your sponsor. That's how it recognizes you, and its authority also comes from the sponsor themselves. The project has whatever you want in it, but a piece of all of the 10 knowledge areas would be a great place to start. So here's a schedule, right? Which might include milestones if you want, some high level milestones, cost, right? My objectives, which are requirements in essence. Here's the business case noted in the charter to, whoops, where'd they go? To make sure they are, oh, here I am, to make sure it's aligned, right? What's success criteria? I always ask this at the start of every project. Define for me success. What is success? That's how I know when I get there, okay? And so it continues with other things like assumptions, risk. Remember, the 10 knowledge areas should be in there at a high level. Maybe some high level stakeholders and their roles. Notice here it is again, that sign off section by the sponsor or sponsors. There could be more than one, and yourself as the project manager. Here's what a sample one might look like. If you go online, you can download one. I think I put a sample one on the site for you to use as well. Notice it lists you as the project manager, and it has any number of other things, including what I loved was success criteria, etc. Okay. We've kind of covered those. So, okay. So that really wraps up the charter. The assumptions log is called just that. But notice assumptions log actually has two things on it. Assumptions log, even though it's only called the assumptions log, it will have assumptions, okay? And it will also list constraints. I don't know why they don't call it the assumptions and constraints log. I don't know. But the assumptions log will have both. Already you're making assumptions and seeing constraints. You want to put those down on the log and track them. Every assumption in the end, I usually move to my risk register. Assumptions are risk. Anything that's assumed true without proof, that's a risk to me. And so here's a sample assumption log, right? Notice you give it an owner. I think that's a very important point. If people by a name, never put an organization as the owner, put a name. Who can I tap? Okay. Then it's always good to have a kickoff meeting. Celebrate. Hey, here's the charter. Next we'll start planning. Here's what's going on. Love to do it face to face, but if you can, of course, we understand in the world we live in. If it's an agile project, it really needs to be face-to-face. You're a small team anyhow. You should be in the same room working together for various reasons. Okay, here's a sample kickoff meeting agenda. If you wanted to use one, you could also find one online. Remember, we talked about a lot of projects are hybrid projects. And so, they give some examples in the book. And one I do is, one thing from Agile I take into my waterfall projects, my predictive projects to manage risk, is I bring my daily stand-up. And actually, I take from my assumptions log or my issues log, it gets updated every night based on new issues we've found. And I start the meeting by briefing the issues and who I'm assigning them to and where I think they bucket, so we can all be in agreement. That's how I run it. It's kind of a hybrid approach. Okay, so they go through the whole Agile example here. It's really good stuff to read through. But what I want to point out is that Scrum is the biggest of all the Agile frameworks. There must be 80 or 100 of them. Scrum is about 40% of all Agile frameworks used. And that's where we get the term, it'll do a sprint. Usually a sprint, sprint planning is about 8 hours. Notice it does the sprint. I don't do a sprint for a month. I do sprints for 2 weeks. The longer the sprint, the less likely is that it will succeed, that it will get done. You begin to drift, right? Because this is change driven and there isn't a lot of focus. You want to stay narrow. So I do not like, it could go 1 week to a month. That's absolutely true. But I focus on 2 weeks for sprints. And notice it's about promoting incremental value. Every end of sprint should have value that you can demonstrate in some way. And at the end, you do a sprint retrospective. That's really where everybody sits together and does lessons learned. They call it the retrospective. So some really great stuff there. When you do this Scrum, you're working for the product owner who has the high-level requirements and is working with the customer. Customer is also on your team. Of course, here's some team members and including developers. Okay. These are Scrum pillars and values. These are Agile pillars and values, to be honest with you. Transparency, inspection, adapt, change-driven, right? You're committed as a team. You stay focused. You're open to each other. You respect and encourage. Those are common in any Scrum, any Agile effort. Okay. Here's some video highlights. I believe you will see them in the book. Mike Cohn has done some great stuff. If you wanted to YouTube Mike Cohn Agile, he has done some phenomenal work. I think you'd enjoy it. But you could also Google Scrum in 10 minutes and WikiSpeed in the TEDx talks. Okay. And so I've talked plenty about hybrid. This is initiating an Agile project. This course really isn't about Agile, but it is, I wanted to cover some key points that you may borrow in your predictive projects. Okay. You're still going to create a charter in Agile. You're still going to identify stakeholders in Agile. But what you're going to do instead of requirements, you create a product backlog. That's a list of things you want to develop that you think have value. Okay, and you're going to prioritize those and pull them forward into a sprint. Okay. And you might pull 2 into a sprint that you can do in 2 weeks, complete the 2-week sprint, and produce that thing of value that I was talking about. Okay. And when you have a couple of sprints done, you'll do a product release and demonstrate it to stakeholders, right? Show it off. Okay. So you'll still identify key stakeholders. Remember, the product owner is the one responsible for maximizing that value. Scrum Master is really the closest thing we have to a project manager in Agile. And of course, you've got your dev team as well. You'll produce a product vision statement, because remember, we're not sure where we're going. This is not predictive project management where we clearly define the requirements and the end state. We're not sure. So the vision statement becomes very important. And this is a really good format that you could use if you're working an Agile project. Okay. So here's a sample product vision statement. You can pause and review at your leisure, and how it would tie then to a product strategy, right? That high level plan that decides where we're going along the way. So we talked in Agile about a roadmap. I said a roadmap was really similar to milestones in a predictive project, which is also called a waterfall. So these are similar to milestones, a roadmap. And you can see that, right? You can see some key events that should happen by certain times. Okay. Okay. And so you'll come up with requirements, and those requirements you build become the product backlog, okay, that you develop. And then you'll prioritize that project backlog, and you'll pull several of, we call them stories, you'll pull those into a sprint, okay? You'll pull from the backlog into a sprint, whatever you can do in the time period allotted. So here's a sample product backlog, right? And these are really stories. These are called, notice, user stories. You've developed user stories. These are very narrow but important pieces of value that you want to develop in your software. And then you'll have a product release plan, right? So you might do sprint, I'll do sprint, 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 and then a release. A release takes all that value, puts it together into a big value V, and shows it off, demonstrates it to stakeholders. So you notice they have a couple of sprints, and then the release is going on as we discussed. Okay. There are best practices. You should take your time and review those, and chapter summary. All right. I enjoyed the heck out of this. Tons of fun in my mind. It's a great career field. There's a lot to learn. I hope you're enjoying it. Contact me. You have my email. You have my phone number. We're doing some video live sessions, which are completely voluntary. That's not for attendance purposes. I'm following attendance by seeing your participation online and how long you're active in Moodle. I can see that going on. Okay, so have a great week. I look forward to seeing you online. Let me know how I can help. Thank you.